After that, actually, I joined National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, where you are in today. And my interest with the use of plant genetic resources has been related to specifically with the wild relatives. But as far as the conservation and use of in general has been wide, predominantly with the cucurbits initially and then with the groundnut, and subsequently when I came to NBPGR, it was actually the responsibility for all the cultivated species. So that is my introduction. इसको बंद कर दें, इसको बंद कर देते हैं.
Sir has written many books on cultivated crops and wild relatives also. He has worked with Dr. Nene.
No, not Dr. Nene. So Dr. Nene actually was one of my boss at ICRISAT because he was the Deputy Director General at one stage, and I was actually serving in the groundnut program there. So I think this introduction is sufficient to start with. And as you know that today's topic is plant genetic resources management and utilization and ethos of Indian traditional agriculture and civilization. So mainly we will be concentrating actually on that how actually the management of plant genetic resources and use has been an integral part of Indian agriculture because of the fact that we have a very significant influence of our culture, which basically from documentation point of view started from the Vedic period. And in that actually the, you can say, respect to the nature was integral, and the sustainable use of plant genetic resources or any bioresources, that was another, you can say, component. So because of this reason, and these, you can say, components were integrated into our social and religious behavior also. So you will find that because of this reason, India has contributed very significantly as far as the, you can say, identification of cultivated plant species or domestication of cultivated plant species, their management and their use actually for the diverse purposes. So you will find that in the subsequent slide that why this happened, there were certain reasons, because you know the, I will actually explain it with the slides, but just in the brief, you may be knowing that the origin of Indian subcontinent took place when the two land masses from the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, they collided together. So as a consequence of that, India is actually having the floristic richness of both the hemisphere. And then subsequently it got actually into an area which is, you can say, connected to Africa and Eurasia and Indo-Malayan region. So because of that actually India was very rich as far as the floristic diversity is concerned. 12% actually of the total biodiversity which is found, that is actually in India at the global level. Similarly, the India, because of the climatic condition which were varying actually from the Arctic condition like in Himalayas to the desert of Thar to the rainforest actually of the Western Ghats, was having a lot of, you can say, diversity from ecological point of view, which actually provided a, you can say, source for adaptation of large number of, you can say, species which were coming from the different part of the world. And also because of this climatic condition which was very diverse, India attracted actually a very large amount of ethnic diversity also. There were 4 main land races like Aryans and the Mongolians and then the Dravidians and then the Austroasiatics. So all these land races together, so we were having a lot of ethnic diversity. So richness of the biodiversity, richness in the ecological diversity and ethnic diversity, and the interaction between these resulted into a very large amount of, you can say, agriculture biodiversity, which was related to the domestic, you can say. And we will find that this particular, you can say, diversity was studied and experienced, and as a consequence of that, the certain systems were evolved which became integral, and they were able to serve in the management and wider use actually of the biodiversity from agriculture point of view. So with this introduction, I will start actually with the slides which will try to explain the different, you can say, component and how these components has actually contributed to the ethos which became integral to the Indian civilization of management and use of genetic resources. So as I said, the Indian subcontinent being the product of collision, and then because it was situated in the Afrotropical, Indo-Malayan and Palearctic, it offered a great, you can say, ecological diversity which started from Himalayas to central peninsular highlands and plateaus and Thar desert and northwest plains and the tropical rainforests in the western. And this has resulted in the evolution of enormous biodiversity, including the floristic diversity, which is 12% of the total. Is it visible to you? Yes. So actually this is the region because of which India became very rich in the floristic diversity. And biogeographically, actually India has been classified into 10 regions, which are basically the ecological region, providing the different sort of condition as I described in the previous slide. And when it actually started reacting with the biodiversity, then actually these type of the, you can say, condition, ecological condition developed in relation to the agriculture or biogeography. That means the Trans-Himalayan region, Western Himalaya, desert, semi-arid region, central, you can say, highlands, Deccan Plateau, then the coastal areas, and the northeast region, which were actually having diverse type of the ecological diversity. So as a consequence, India is among the 12 mega biodiversity centers in relation to the total biodiversity. It contains 3 of the 34 global biodiversity hotspots, which is Himalayas and eastern Indo-Malayan region and the western Ghats and Sri Lankan region. The Indian flora actually, as I said, represents 12% of the global flora, and as per the recent assessment, it is having around 47,513 plant species, of which 20,141 taxa are from angiosperm, which is actually contributing the main, you can say, species to the agriculture, which belongs to, and approximately 7% of the described species are, and this also includes some of the lower plants. And similarly, as I said, that inclusion of the rich biodiversity, it was also supported by the several indigenous and migratory races, as I said, Cossack, which was Aryans, and then Dravidians, Mongolites, Negroids, and Ostroids. And as a consequence of that, we presently have 420 tribal communities, 227 ethnic groups spread over 5,000 villages, etc. So they mean to say that there was a lot of diversity from the floristic point of view as well as from the ethnic point of view, and the interaction between the two has resulted actually in identification of the plants for agriculture. So Indian subcontinent has, because of this, Indian continent has seen actually the human evolution from hunter-gatherer stages to the practice of domiculture, which is actually cultivation of economically important plants in a single plot, to settled agriculture. So the interaction between ethnic and migrating races, this resulted not only in domestication of the species which were present in the Indian subcontinent, but also actually the species which were exotic and were introduced actually by natural forces or the human forces to India, like maize, sorghum, guar. And this also, these type of the development subsequently, when it started settled life, the men started settled life, they actually resulted in the evolution of certain, you can say, civilization, some of the oldest civilization in the world, Indus-Saraswati civilization. You may be knowing that as far as Saraswati civilization is concerned, there has been a debate whether it was there or not. But recently, by, you can say, satellite pictures, etc., it has been proved that there is a river which is underground and which is flowing actually through the Thar Desert, and it was probably the oldest civilization, even before the Harappan civilization. And some people actually they joined together, and then the Gangetic civilization, which from where actually the Vedic civilization started. So as per the adaptability, the dynamic process of this origin and evolution of agriculture or cultivation of the plant that continued, and it was mainly concentrated on 21 agriculture biodiversity heritage sites. Actually, I have written a book, and the people who are interested, I have got 4 copies, who are interested actually in this, they can buy these copies, which will be very interesting to know about the history of Indian agriculture and how it evolved actually in different places, and some of the, you can say, genetic diversity which is existing in the different agricultural region. It led to establishment of the 21 agricultural zones. These are the biodiversity heritage centers, which has been shown in the map, and these are the, you can say, agricultural regions, and you will find that they, to a very large extent, they overlap, because the plants which were adapted to a particular, you can say, ecological condition, they were actually growing that area, and they spread actually throughout that particular region because the conditions were quite suitable. So these were the 12 agricultural regions. So now finally, as a consequence of these interactions, etc., around 811 plant species they are cultivated in India till date. We have published a paper actually which came out from the PPVFR, and where actually we have tried to inventorize all the cultivated species grown in India and their wild relatives which are found in India. So 811 species, and India has been considered actually the center of origin of a cultivated species for a very long time. And Vavilov, who was the actually person who evolved or coined the word center of origin, where from the different crop species evolved, he actually has listed 166. Then Jevon and David, he listed actually 171. But as per our recent assessment, there are around 215 species which has been domesticated in India. In addition to this, 600 exotic species have been introduced. So you see that ingenuity of Indians, because of the civilizational effect, was there from the very beginning. We were trying to not only domesticate or you can say patronize our own species, but we were also trying to accept the species which were of economic value coming from outside. So in addition to this also, you will find that if you go to the tribal areas, there are a very large number of plants which are being used for the food purposes, for medicinal purposes. So there are around 1,532 species which are being used for food purposes, around 9,500 were actually being studied for the ethnobotanical, and 7,500 for ethnomedicinal properties. So no, what I mean to say that in case you see from the totality point of view, the contribution of Indians or Indian agriculture scientists or Indian agriculture has been very, very significant as compared to any, you can say, part of the world, because that particular thing was influenced by our culture, which was basically predominantly which was influenced by the Vedic culture. So these are some of the exotic species which were, and you will find that now actually they have become the major crops actually of the country, though they were not belonging to India, but they have become, and that is because of the reason that we were religiously told that to accept anything which is good coming from outside. Now before actually I go to the main, we had to understand that what is agrobiodiversity. Most of the time we get confused that whatever is domesticated, that is agrobiodiversity. And we talk actually when we talk about variation in this agrobiodiversity, we are confined to those particular species which are of domestic value or economic value. But agrobiodiversity is more than that. It is a mixed agroecosystem which actually includes not only the crop species or the animals which are part of that agroecosystem, but also the genetic diversity which is found in the soil, flora and fauna, which are supporting that particular ecosystem, and wild species which are, and obviously the other, you can say, land races and the breeding lines, etc., of. Now, because of our you can say cultural background, to understand the whole agroecosystem in totality, we have bothered about these organisms also. Not only that we concentrated only on the cultivated species, we concentrated actually on other species also which were supporting a particular agroecosystem. So that is the beauty actually, and that is why actually the Indians or Indian agriculture, traditional agriculture, has made a very significant, and there are examples you will find that we think that the farmers, they are not educated, but if you interact with some of the farmers, you will discover that they are highly educated and they know actually the agriculture more than the agriculture scientists. Many times actually we get that sort of, you can say, arrogance. But if you really interact, then you will understand that they are quite intelligent. Because so agrobiodiversity dealing with the variation of agroecosystem. So not only those plants, and then the plants and these animals and fishes which are part of that, and the variation in the species which are directly or indirectly sustaining humankind, and also includes species of interest that are part and supportive of ecosystem. Conventionally, they refer to the genetic diversity or germplasm of actual or potential value that exists among the individuals or group of individuals, and it may be in the form of the seed, pollen, cell, DNA molecule containing functional units of the. So when we talk about the genetic resources, it will be having all the component, and these all the component, they have a different significance in the you can say management of genetic resources and use. They are fundamental to the fulfillment of our basic human needs like food, fiber, fuel, medicine, etc. Now I come to the main topic, that is the we are going to that how actually it became the management of the plant genetic resources and the use became actually a integral part of the traditional Indian agriculture. And that is because actually there are certain tenets which were actually taught to us from our childhood to follow, and that's why actually we were very much concerned about not ourselves but about all the species which were existing in a biosphere. So primarily it was drawn from the Vedic culture, and because of one of the things that we should accept anything good, this particular Vedic culture has been a dynamic system. It has been evolving over time, adopted beneficial component of all culture, and as I said that it started from the Saraswati Valley or Harappan, and then it reached to the peak actually during Vedic period. Now Vedic beliefs are let the good and knowledge come from all sides. It also preaches us love, affection and worship Mother Nature of environmental peace, survival of earth and coexistence of all organisms, not only the domesticated. So that is the region actually that we have contributed significantly in the management and use. Therefore has the capacity of integration of knowledge. We don't have arrogance that we know all. We are ready to accept actually the knowledge from any side. So therefore has the capacity to integrate knowledge with indigenous knowledge and further advancement of technology, do more innovative technology, and this was integrated actually in our social and religious beliefs. Now this, in case we break up, so the culture was born and nourished. This is one of our belief, that our culture was born and nourished in the forest. Because we were when we were hunter-gatherer stage, everything actually, all requirements, they were fulfilled by the forest resources. So that's why we say that it is born and nourished by the forest. Water, earth, plant, animal, human and divine, they all come together in the form of goddess Prithvi. That was our belief. So that's why actually we have been able to take care of everything. Unless man can learn to take some interest and delight in the beauty of diversity of the world for its own sake, and unless he can see some use in the things not apparently useful. Not that we just bother about those things which are apparently, but we bother about all those things because you never know, because we know very little out of the total knowledge which is existing in the nature. Things will not go well. We must live for something beside making living. If we do not permit earth to produce beauty and joy, in the end it will not produce food either. So in case we don't take care of the earth or mother earth in totality, or mother nature in totality, it will, what is happening today, you yourself are watching that climatic change, etc., is causing devastating, and it doesn't actually spare anyone. So it is the responsibility of human beings that they, in partnership of the God, should establish prosperity and well-being of the earth. If you have heard the Gita or you have read the Gita, when the Arjuna asks actually Krishna, what is the difference between the yogi and a common man? The difference between the yogi and common man, the common man is just worried about himself, while the yogi, he takes care of everything. He just worried about the nature, he worries about the water, and he uses the thing in sustainable manner. So that is the thing. So that is that, when he also says that after the sacrifice of the God, when he produces human being, he left actually to human being that I give you the cow of fulfillment, and now it is up to you how you help it. So that your karma will tell you. So plant possess, they also believe, unlike other cultures, plant possess soul. Atma सब में है. And there are God and goddesses in the plants. That's why we should respect. Plants are repeatedly mentioned in the Indian religious literature. No ceremony in our culture is complete without use of sacred plants. Evolved, and because of that, it has resulted into evolution of a tree cult worship. Trees are abode or spirits. They actually house spirits in themselves. That's why we should be very careful while dealing with the trees. They may curse also. And whole ritual was laid. Now you see that even if you have to destroy, now what is happening actually for the development exercise, thousands of the trees are cut without bothering actually how it is going to adversely affect the nature or our lives. But in our rituals was laid for felling the trees and for image making, even for the use, they used to worship and then take the plant actually for that particular purpose. So these were some of the integral, you can say, component of our culture, which actually has helped us contribute more in management and use of genetic resources. And I think this is a Vedic mantra, where actually we are not actually just praying for the peace of humanity, but we are praying for the peace of all, including water, Mother Earth, air, and herbs. Here you can see that herbs, in all herbs. So we just trees, so we creepers, so all we pray for the, while actually morning when we get up and we say all these type of the mantra, we pray for the peace for all. Now, as a consequence of this, in the Indian agriculture, there are several systems which has evolved, which will further explain to you that how traditional Indian agriculture or Indian culture contributed for the better management and use of plant genetic resources. I will just read out this. I think we will deal actually with, so Gurukul system, sacred plants, sacred groves, bagichi, jhoom, homestead gardens, on-farm maintenance, seed multiplication. You will see that how intelligent Indian farmers were. Development of farming system which were having polyculture, mixed cropping, biodiversity, agroforestry system, mixed farming involving components of agrobiodiversity, biodiversity-based forest management system, and seed storage. That was also a part. You will just wonder that how actually our people, our forefathers were intelligent to actually conserve or save actually the diversity. Now Gurukul system, you must have heard, I don't need to tell you because most of us are Indians and we know little bit of our culture even after having some bias. In ancient times, Rishi and Munis had their ashrams in the deep forest, which used to give us actually better understanding of the nature, better understanding about the flora, fauna which was existing and how they should be used in sustainable manner, what are their characteristics, etc. Study of nature including biodiversity used to be an important component of their curriculum. तो ऋषि मुनि वही नहीं पढ़ाते थे कि मंत्र वगैरह जपना, वो और भी चीज़ें पढ़ाते थे. And you must have seen actually in the several scriptures. This led to the study of flora. So you will find that they used to study the, you can say, plants which were properties of plant species. That's how actually they were able to identify medicinal plant and other things, etc. And search of economically important plants related to food, fiber, fuel, medicinal potential, etc. This led to, and now you see that Indians were the first to document these properties of the plants for the world at large, not only for the Indian subcontinent, for world at large. This led to documentation of large number of plants along with their properties at different stages of human evolution, making India one of the important centers of knowledge, not only the important center of, you can say, biodiversity, but important center of knowledge about the plant diversity and the properties. Now, so the Gurukul system converted India into the center of knowledge associated with the plant or plant genetic resources, led to first oldest literary documentation of knowledge about plant species. 67 species were mentioned in Rig Vedas, which are the oldest, the whole world agrees that these were the oldest document or oldest, you can say, literary documents which are available to the humanity. 67, 81 in Yajurveda, 290 in Atharveda, and Ayurveda, which was dealing with the medicinal plant predominantly. This is credited with the documentation of plant species with the properties in 3 legendary authoritative. These are the classical, they are still available, their translations are available. Charak Samhita, Shushya Samhita, Asatang Hardhyana, and they are so old, 700 BC, 200. So what I mean to say that the developing knowledge, management of these, it is not actually, as far as the Indians are concerned, it is not actually the story of only recent past. It has been there from millenniums. So 700 BC, 200 BC, and Riksha Ayurveda, Surpala, who describes actually even the cultivation practices and property, including, you can say, beside the properties, cultivation practices also around 170 plants. So I mean to say that if you see in the totality, we have contributed a lot as far as the genetic resources and their use and how they should be managed. Now this also, when this particular study was going on, this also led to actually identification of some of the sacred plants. जैसे हमारे यहाँ तुलसी है, सब लोग लगाते हैं, लोग पीपल को पूजते हैं. So now this particular thing also result, now this पूजना, लगाना, respect करना, this results actually in the conservation. You don't destroy that diversity, and the diversity keep on, and when you diversely use in the different environment, it keep on, you can say, generating or evolving. So tradition of planting, protecting sacred trees like banyan, peepal, bale, dates to Indus Valley culture. It has been documented that it was done at that time also. Bodhi trees were associated with the, जैसे वट वृक्ष है. Lord Buddha in Gaya, he got actually his, which is one of the biggest religion in the world. So Bodhi tree, identifying plants with the deities and this was the Aryan tradition कि जंगल में किसी भी जाके प्लांट को उसके ऊपर एक पत्थर रख देते थे and it used to become a deity which used to be worshipped, because we used to take actually the forest as the god, and all the plants actually they were the component of that, you can say, large component. Plant auspicious for flowering or wood or any other part used sacrifice fire. So Homa, now for example, Havan को हम लोग सोचते हैं कि this is only part actually of a domestic affair when you do some puja or something like that then. But you will find that Homa was a component actually of agriculture also. And it has been scientifically proved that in case you have a yajna in the fields, then the amount of the flora fauna of particularly of the you can say different pathogens, it becomes quite reduced. So, so what I mean to say is that some of these traditions, they are actually from the, and we probably don't understand, but now actually certain things are being. Garuda Purana mentioned the ritual and use. They have actually described that what is the ritual for which god, which you can say plant, and indirectly if you see, when we are giving importance to a plant, indirectly we are trying to conserve it because it is important. It is, you can say, it is worshipable. So if you want to fulfill our worship, that particular plant should survive, and that's what. Annual calendar. They have actually in Garuda Purana, annual calendar for propagation and offering. Plant revered for life saving, and we have several examples where many of the tribes, Vishnoi, who sacrifice actually their life for saving the plant. So this table I have taken from Garuda Purana. You can say that as per the Hindu calendar, what are the plants which has to be cultivated or propagated, and for which goddess they had to be used. So for example, Datura is there, and now it is used for Shiva, you may be knowing. So now similarly actually for the different plants, they were having a calendar that when it should be planted. So this is the way actually that you are trying to manage the genetic resources of these plant species in a better way and use them in a sustainable way, not that you just over-exploit them. One of the problems actually today we are facing, particularly in the herbal medicinal plants, they are being exploited from the nature, and as a consequence of that, many of them are under threat, and many of them have extinct also. But at that time, our forefathers were very conscious. Okay, and cultivation actually is one way of managing the genetic resources. If you just exploit and don't actually cultivate them, then after some time that particular species will be under threat. Now sacred groves, this was another concept, and this was concept also you can say is a byproduct of our Rishi Muni concept. Respectful attitude towards mother nature and forest led to the development of basic principle of biodiversity and forest management. Now biosphere reserve concept जो दुनिया में आजकल बहुत popular है, and the western culture or FAO etc. they are taking credit, but basically you find that this particular concept came from the India. Forests were considered sacred and property of village gods. हर जगह हर गांव के पास एक फॉरेस्ट हुआ करता था, और उसको हम लोग जो है उसमें जो है उसको गॉड के रूप में देते थे, because it was a source for several resources, several byproducts. And sacred groves, as per the you can say situation, they were spread over from 5 hectares to hundreds of hectares. They were, now the other thing you will find that our forefathers, they also knew that how to protect them. So often involved regeneration of forests organized by the local communities under the forest work plan to support sustainable and commercial extraction of goods such as timber, firewood, forage, and leading to the conservation of regional biodiversity. So, but everything should be done under the work plan which has been developed by the villagers or communities for extraction of these goods, not over-exploiting, without over-exploiting. Probably it involved in Meghalaya, because Meghalaya is very rich as far as the biodiversity is concerned, and one of the recent study that there are the secret groves which are found in Himalayas, they are having around 395 species belonging to 250 genera and 100. So what is the amount? Meghalaya is a very small state. What is the amount actually of the diversity which has been managed or conserved in this? And then subsequently it is expected to northeast hill region, Aravalli Hills, Chand and Bastar area, central India. It has gone up to the Konkan and Malabar region of Western Ghats. And all these things were integral to the agriculture. So when it was the zone actually which was the boundary of the forest, there you will find that the agriculture was merged with them, and they were taking support, or they were trying to support each other. Now this concept was extended to rural areas also. I don't know how many people you have come from the north, but I know in my childhood that my maternal, you can say, village and my paternal village both used to have this bagichi concept. You will find that in the outskirts of the village there will be a bagichi which will be full of protected, you can say, local flora. And along with that bagichi you will find that there will be a dharmshala, there will be a well, there will be you can say a wrestling, that's also. Now all these, you can say, practices were contributing to conservation, particularly in the village area, where you will find of medicinal aromatic plant. And all the villagers, they knew, they were, in case you, for example, if you want to have a dental problem, they knew that this is the plant which can be used actually for solving that. If you want to have some other problem, so they were trying to protect, and this particular, so that concept of, you can say, sacred, it actually spread to the rural areas, from the forest to the rural areas as a bagichi concept. This concept is common in North India and rural areas, where most villages has extended garden of local flora or economic plant facilitating conservation and use. They also had temple, well, wrestling ring, dharmshala, community center, and कभी कभी वहाँ पे, अब तो नहीं, उस समय पहले साधु संत भी रहा करते थे. Now it has become little difficult, but previously it used to be there that either a, you can say, local Brahman or some, you can say, pious person used to live. The other thing actually is a jhum cultivation, which is actually still very popular, particularly in the northeast. Here also it is involved actually slash and burning and clearing the forest plots, and then try to cultivate actually economically important plant. This was a step forward from domiculture. As I told you, the domiculture, which has been a word which has been coined by the Australians, which refers to cultivation of economic plants in a plot. But this human cultivation, it goes one step ahead of that, where actually we try to cultivate actually the plants in rotation and come after some time when the soil fertility is regained, etc. It is prevalent in the northeastern region, Brahmaputra Valley, and it has gone up to, you can say, other part of the country also, and where actually it has been called by the different, for example, in Koraput region, which is the center of origin for the rice and very rich, it is called as Padu, while actually in Malabar region it is called as Poonam or Poonamal. It involves cultivation of many species. I have taken an example, 15 to 30 species in a agriculture which is called Swidden agriculture farming, and this is actually Angami tribes of Nagaland, which actually, where women actually do this. And this led to the progress towards the agroforestry, that the tree-based cultivation in Meghalaya or Himalayas. So this is just a picture to show what they do, and then this is from the same spot. You see that how many, you can say, diverse type of the plant species has been cultivated, which is resulting in the management and extending the diversity. Then we come to the homestead farm system, which is very popular in the it is very popular actually in all our villages, but I think this is very popular as far as the Western Ghats are concerned. So it is one of the most ancient system. It includes practice of cultivation in the backyard gardens or near habitation. Most prevalent in the Western Ghats, uses the principle of multi-storied intercropping. Now you see that they have taken idea from the how the plants in the rainforest are growing in nature. And that idea they have tried to copy with the economically important plants. So you will find that they grow the crops or economically important plants in layers. So upper layer will be of trees, second layer will be of peppers, third layer will be of banana, etc. And then at the base they will grow actually the grasses or ginger or you can say turmeric, etc., etc. This is very popular actually, as I said, in the Malabar region. And as I said, the idea they have got it from the tropical rainforest, because if you go to the tropical rainforest, you will find the same thing, that there will be large trees, then there will be shrubs, and then there will be, you can say, climbers, and then at the base you will find some crops growing. Often combined, now this particular system is often combined with the livestock, poultry, and rearing interacting synergistically. They provide actually, for example, manure, other thing, etc. for the system. Provide nutritional security, and because they are providing diverse, you can say, economic product, they provide nutritional security, fodder, extra income, etc. to the farmers. They are self-contained, need-oriented system, and basically they are need-oriented, so whatever actually they require for their daily uses or for commercial exploitation, they grow them accordingly, and predominantly organic. That is another thing, which is another key. Here they don't use actually any, you can say, inorganic substances for biological control, etc. So biological control and for insect pest disease, and use of botanicals like tobacco detection or neem extract, etc. So you will find that they are actually not trying to exploit in a way which may be, you can say, injurious to the diversity, because you know that in case you go for the plants may develop, or the insect, etc., they may develop resistance, and then they become more proliferant. So this is actually a homestead, for example, from this is a picture from Malabar region. Now you see, our farmers or our forefathers, they have been, because you people are all educated, how many people actually, or how many breeders, they concentrate on the maintenance breeding, and that is the reason that our varieties, they get deteriorated very fast, and we have to go for actually, but our, you can say, farmers, they actually knew about this. The Indian farmers has always been improving the inherited crop diversity. Whatever actually they came from their forefathers, through rigorous selection in the standing crop and collecting seed for the next sowing. So that particular exercise, which were not scientifically taught to them, they have been doing it, thereby restricting the genetic degradation of open pollinated varieties. This process in other crops help generating clonal diversity. For vegetatively propagated, in case they select a clone which is superior as compared to the rest of, then they are trying to generate more genetic diversity. So this is the way actually they were doing maintenance breeding and trying to raise genetic. Then another thing that we think that the conservation of seed, etc., that is our idea, and but the farmers, they have been practicing from a very long time. Indian farmer wishes to see. Now, you will find that if you interact with the farmers, you will find very funny statement, but they look funny, but they are very intelligent statement. At one time, one of the reporters, he went to a village and he said to a farmer, okay, why do you share your seeds with the other farmers? He said, okay, because actually other farmers, he also takes his material to the market, so you are trying to help actually your competitor. He said, no, I want to see good crops all the round, so that my crops is also good, other crops is also. That is the perception. So he will say, and that is the thing actually resulted in exchange or informal exchange of the seed of superior quality between the friends and religious, you can say, or neighbors, etc. So that sort of thing actually was there inculcated in us from the very beginning. Stored seed to ensure practice of exchange of quality seed with neighbors and relatives. This may help in maintaining the vigor in outcrossing crops and thereby helping conservation and advancement of genetic diversity. So actually these are the type of the practices which they were doing. I will not say unknowingly, they knew all this, they had a knowledge, but probably we were not able to appreciate. That's why actually we many times in, you can say, loose language say uneducated. But the farmers, they know, because the agriculture is a, you can say, life and death for their survival. Then on the similar basis, when they went on experimenting, they developed many polyculture or many mixed cropping system or farming system promoting conservation of PGR in diversity. So one of the concepts they developed polyculture, which actually, where actually they are trying to cultivate many crops in the same plot. But it just generally just revolves around one major crop. It may be annual crop like rice, or it may be, you can say, perennial crop like coconut, etc. Promotes, now this sort of thing when they are doing, they select actually on some basis, and they try to, you can say, take the benefit of synergistic, you can say, interaction between the various biotech components, harnessing the benefit accrued from such interaction and conserving the genetic resources. So that was one, you can say, farming system they developed. So this is, you can say, one of the example of polyculture. This is the example where actually rice actually, they are actually in the previous one, the probably I think the coconut was the main, and these are the, you can say, species which are grown. Here actually the rice is the main crop, annual crop, and around that actually you will find the many other crops they are grown. Mixed cropping was another thing, but mixed cropping actually confined the cultivation of annual species together. So they were very intelligent. If you go and watch that on what basis they have done this mixed cropping, you will see that in some mixed cropping they will be having the crop plants which are maturing at different stages, and one crop plant is beneficial at one stage to other and subsequently. So involved cultivation and involves short, medium and long duration crop seed to harness interactive benefits and relay harvest. So for example, I just give you example that one farmer, if you go in you can say Andhra Pradesh, etc., you will find that they are cultivating groundnut and pearl millet. Now pearl millet actually, groundnut is a slow growing, pearl millet is a fast growing. So pearl millet provides protection actually from the local, and when the pearl millet is harvested for one use, then the groundnut boost up actually, and then, so what I mean to say, they study all these things, that how this particular thing can be and how this particular situation can be exploited for our benefit. There are certain systems which are very popular, for example, Baranaja, which is popular actually in the Uttarakhand area, but you will find that in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana also, this particular concept actually has been taken up. Then you will find cereals and legumes, as I was giving example, millet and groundnut, cereals and other, you can say, crop, wheat and mustard, cereals and vegetables, annual. Many times actually not only they do actually the floriculture also, not only they can, and you must have read actually that this marigold, it has been used actually as a mixed crop, not only for exploitation the floral value, but for nematode control. So they actually now tall crop like dhecha, you won't believe, I think the people who are from the north, this blue bull is a big problem. It actually, for example, the Haryana, Rajasthan, etc., they spoil the whole crop. Now farmers, they learn that dhecha is actually a gleberous plant who can improve the fertility also, and it can become a fence. So what I mean to say that they are very intelligent, and these are the type of the things they have been exploiting or evolving to save their crop and to get better, you can say, result. So this is dhecha actually, which is crop rotation, that is another thing. And this particular crop rotation is reference actually is found in the Vedic literature also. So it has been a very old practice, and this is Vedic literature में it has been done for the weed control, pest, disease by reducing build-up to improve the soil fertility, soil erosion, division of labor also, that what women should do and what men should do. So just to mitigate different, you can say, risk factor, this particular rotation has been done, and it has been mentioned in the Vedic literature also. You will find that either economically important plant or leguminous plants, which are actually good, you can say, nitrogen fixer and improve the fertility, they have been. Somewhere you will find crop with fallow rotation. Now, when you go for a crop with a fallow field, it actually restricts the build-up of many pathogens, etc., which may be the major. Crop rotation, take the benefit of, for example, biotic stress, etc. Cereals and leguminous crop, as I told you, that they will provide fertility. Soil, cereals and oil seed, and pearl made in rotation with the sorghum, groundnut, cotton, minor, because it is a dryland crop. And in dry and light soils, pearl made is often rotated with the pulse like moth and mogwin. So just to take the advantage actually of each other. And in this process, they are trying to manage the genetic resources of more than one species. Now again, all these ideas must have come while they are seeing and watching the local biodiversity. And in the local biodiversity, it has resulted actually in the development of agroforestry. In India, it is believed that it was started from the Vedic period. क्योंकि खेजड़ी जो है, which is actually from Rajasthan, and it is a lifeline, because that particular plant is multi-purpose. It is having a, you can say, vegetable, इसकी जो फलियां हैं सुखा के, they can be used actually for throughout the year. It work as a fodder for the animals, wood. So you will find that mention of the khejri actually in the ancient literature, Rig Veda, Arth Veda, and ancient scriptures. And as I said, that they are going to use either, in the case of the trees, either the trees which can improve or help improve the soil fertility, or the trees which are of economic gains. So as a consequence of that, you will find that a lot of, you can say, agroforestry system have developed, but it required actually a lot of, you can say, thinking and lot of observation by the local people to evolve all these things. And as a consequence of this, you will find that there are certain regular, you can say, agroforestry system which has evolved. For example, khejri in case of Rajasthan, where you will find the fields where the sparsely these khejri plants, and similarly actually the elder in northeast, which actually try to again give the fertility, and their wood is used actually for different purposes. So this is the elder tree actually which is being planted in northeast agroforestry system. And again, local ingenuity. These are some of the, you can say, khejri plants grown in the forest, and after some time you will find that this particular thing will be planted with the pearl meadows. Now mixed farming involving the other now up till now I was concentrating only on the plants, but there are, you can say, other components of agriculture. Agriculture consists actually of animals and fish and other, and we have been talking about the white revolution or blue revolution, other thing, etc. So that particular thing has also been, you can say, been exploited, and has helped us actually in the better management actually of the genetic resources of all other components. So improving genetic diversity suited to diverse ecosystem. I am talking about the agro ecosystem, involving livestock, involving poultry, involving, you can say, aquatic thing. And for example, homestead garden in the, you can say, Malabar region, it involves uplands with crops only. So only the upland crops, they are mixed. Then you will find involving upland crops with livestock. And then you will find involving upland and lowland crops. And then you will find upland associated with the adjoining lowland, both crops and livestock. And involving uplands and adjoining backwaters with crops, poultry, livestock. So you will find that if you go to the Malabar region, that is the Kerala, you will find that they have developed a very large number of, you can say, these types of systems which are having different components of the agriculture, and that's how they are contributing for better management and use actually of the genetic diversity. So you can see that this is the Rajasthan, etc., where actually in Andhra Pradesh, where actually they are having this, you can say, way of conserving not only the genetic resources of plant but animals also. These are the, here this is the practice which is being followed in Assam, etc., where you will find at the base there are fishes. Here you can see some, there are at the bases actually there are certain fishes, and then these are the ducks which are going actually in the rice field. So this is how actually they are trying to, and this beside economic gain, it is contributing for better management. And then also we have a tradition that how the barren lands or the degraded lands can be improved. Because India is a very large country, up to population bahut, it has exploded, but at one time actually the population was not that, and we were having a lot of land which could have been used but were not used. So for that reason actually they started actually trying to improve those lands. India has a tradition of growing native economically important plants in remnant habits. The habits which are not used, and जैसे ऊसर लैंड हम जिसको बोलते हैं, there actually certain plants actually species were, and not only actually the local plants, here even exotic plants like Samroko gluca, it has been actually used actually for you can say helping the degraded land to come back to the cultivation. This helps in restricting the degradation of land. Economically important local species can provide additional, you can say, produce or income to the local farmers. Also it helps conservation of local biodiversity and ecology of the area. And some of the common, you can say, grasses which has been used actually for supporting the livestock, etc., are these, and also certain trees like Azadirachta indica or acacia. Such studies might play, and probably in the initial stage these studies might have played actually a great role in establishing the concept of secret groves or bagichi, because basically these plants were coming from the forest area. And these type of the plants can also help actually in today's problem, like the enhanced ecosystem function. We require actually, if we have a greater biomass, we will be producing more oxygen. So we will be actually contributing to the environmental. And for even becoming a sink for the carbon dioxide and reducing the toxicity. Many of the plants actually in the Karnataka area, you will find that they are actually grown along the streams, because they have the capacity to take the toxic substances or absorb the toxic substances, making the water pure. Now seed storage, we think that we were the only people who knew about this way of conservation of the, you can say, genetic resources, but this existed actually in Indian culture from a very long time. Short-term seed storage for the next sowing I have already described. Community seed storage, in many, particularly in the south, in many temples you will find that they were having cellars which were actually where the community, you can say, seed storage was done. For long-term storage, there has been a practice actually where they used to have a kalash at the top of the temple, and this kalash actually used to be made especially of Panchatattva, and in this kalash they used to actually store the seed. मैं गया था this Trivandrum में Padmanabha Swami जो temple है, and when I asked actually the guide that what is there in the kalash, and there were a huge kalash, then he told me, he said this is containing the, and these seeds are regularly replaced after a gap of 12 years. And I think when they have decided after a gap of 12, they must have studied this thing, that how long the viability can be maintained in these type of the colors. And they were used actually, we talk about the disaster management. Our forefathers actually doing the disaster management long ago. So in a situation of natural calamity, say flood, something, those seeds were intact and used actually to regenerate the agriculture of that particular area. So the seed storage also is not a, you can say, new concept, or the conservation of genetic resources by seed storage is not a new concept to Indians. They have been practicing this thing for a very long time. Now, I think at the end, you must have already seen that what are the benefits and how actually Indian culture and Indian people or Indian ingenuity has contributed to the better management and use of genetic resources. But beside that, these actually, these practices also have some agriculture benefit to improve the farmer's income. Our present government is talking about the doubling the farmer income. I think they can take some of the ideas from this, by which they can grow a zero, you can say, zero toxicity crop. Zero budget to nahi possible hai, kuch na kuch to karna padta hai. Low budget and zero toxicity, zero residual crop, where actually we don't leave actually any toxic residual. So they ensure availability of diverse genetic resources product supporting. So one of the things that you get diverse, you can say you need not to be dependent on the outsider. Everything is self-contained and you get. Economic pest and disease management, biological, you can say control of the pest and management. Reduce fertilizer use. You don't be depend on the dependent, जैसे fertilizer की line लगी रहती हैं. So in case actually we started using some of these practices, probably there will be no queue for, you can say, purchasing urea at a very high, you can say, rate, etc. Zero residual toxicity, ensuring cleaner environment. That is another thing. That beside that, they are also taking care, actually, not only management, but we are also taking care of the management of environment. So, an improved pollination. Now, some of the things actually which we completely forget, that like this actually we improve we are supporting actually the genetic diversity of the insects also, which actually go for increase, you can say, pollination or improved pollination, better fruit setting and better yield. So in case, so all these are the other benefits actually which can be obtained in case we study these things properly as our forefathers have done and integrate into Indian traditional agriculture. But unfortunately, we think that only the Western science, or you can say the biotechnology, that is the only, you can say, area which can solve the problem. So we just run, we have been a copycats, we run against the Western culture and try to do, forgetting. Because in case, if you calculate the total gain of the traditional agriculture as compared to the gain of modern agriculture, you will find that it will be no way inferior. So I end here, and in case you have any question, I will be very pleased, because I intend to discuss with young minds. तो ये किताब जो है, this book actually, which will be giving you a very good idea about how agriculture has evolved in India in different parts, and you will find that there will be a different, somewhere actually, for example, there are certain areas where actually agriculture is started with the domestication of animals. Most of the time you think that it started with the domestication of plants. It's not true. Plants were grown to support actually the livestock. So this is the way actually you can learn a lot of things from and about the genetic diversity also. And at present this particular book actually is available on 50% discount, which will be coming around 550. So either for your personal use or for your personal library, in case somebody is interested, they are with me. And I will give you receipt also, so that you can claim from your contingency or from your institute. So any question, please. यदि आप क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछेंगे तो आई विल थिंक दैट आई हैव नॉट बीन एबल टू communicate properly, and that's why there is no question. But in case you can contribute from your side also. In case something I have left, you can contribute from your side. Okay, this is some of the practices which are followed in your areas, or you know. भाई आप लोग तो सम ऑफ द पीपल आर पीएचडी स्टूडेंट ऑल्सो ना, तो कुछ तो इंयूनिटी होनी चाहिए ना, थोड़ा सा ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट समथिंग मोर.
Sir, in present era, how we can make balance between our traditional agriculture and modern agriculture? Because population is a very big issue nowadays.
नहीं वही तो एक्चुअली एज आई सेड दैट one of the basic tenet actually of our culture is to accept the good which is coming from outside, maybe coming from any source. So now the DNA technology is also available, or the high-tech technology is available for, you can say, effective use of the genetic resources. Now one of the method can be that we should try to integrate actually high-tech technology with the traditional technology. Now traditional technology, which I have tried to explain to you, they have ecological benefits. They are less, you can say, toxic to the environment. While the modern technology which are coming, they have biosafety issues. Now how, if we combine these two together, then how we can meet actually the problem of, you can say, producing more food or filling the, you can say, belly of everyone, of a rising population, and also protecting the environment. So what you are saying, that should be our strategy, that we should not try to impose whatever has been done in the West on Indian situation, but we should try to be more innovative, that how this particular, you can say, technology can be combined with our traditional technology. Now one of the good example, for example, we have in transgenic technology, which is the recombinant DNA technology, which is we are having a problem of biosafety. Biosafety which may be dangerous or injurious to the human being, or it may be injurious to the environment. Biodiversity is total, because in a particular plant become resistant, then it will be adversely affecting the biodiversity of that particular species. So we had to combine these together, and one of the way, for example, transgenic technology provides us the power to transfer any gene from any organism to any other organism, fish to animal or fish to plant or anywhere. And it may, there are debate whether it will be having adverse effect, or that's why actually the biosafety rules and regulations have been evolved in each and every country. But in case actually we go with the traditional, then we know about the the wild species, and if we want to, we should, if we want to improve our crops, we should not go actually for transfer of genes from the very distant species. We should concentrate on the wild relatives, because these are the natural genes, and natural genes can be transferred using the DNA technology, which is called as cis transgenic. So we are not going completely transgenic, but we are going for cis transgenic. The genes which are already available in the wild relatives actually of these crop species, they can be actually exploited using the recombinant DNA technology. So this is how actually these things can be combined. Similarly, fertilizer application. It is just possible that somewhere, because now you see that in most of the ecosystems, the major problem is wrong application or more application of fertilizer or pesticide. Now because of that actually, for example, our Prime Minister have been able to recognize that by soil health ka pata hona chahiye, kya kitna milana chahiye. So there can be a combination. Similarly, there can be a combination of biological control and the chemical control. So that, for example, when the infestation comes, and in case it is in large, you can say, or epidemic form, then we can go for chemical control. But subsequently, so that it doesn't multiply on the field and spread over, we can go for biological control. So we are, in the long term actually the adverse effect they will go down. So what I mean to say that again, as our forefathers have been thinking, we can think of that how these modern technology can be combined together to innovate new, you can say, technology, which will be win-win situation for both, for traditional agriculture as well as for the modern agriculture. We don't actually condemn that thing. Okay, so DNA technology we don't condemn, but it can be used actually using the natural genes, which are present actually in the wild. And how many wild species gene has been used? Very few. So why don't we concentrate on that? And there are a lot of information which is available. So we should concentrate on the management of the genetics of the wild species also and the diversity of that, and then try to exploit using the modern technology.
सर जो अभी चल रहा है कि all means like Indian officials on every international platform they are stressing that India is shifting towards ZBF means like zero budget natural farming, but the ICAR authorities means like 1 month before they have given that this is not practically possible in Indian condition. So means like that natural farming is not that useful in Indian conditions right now, or here also means in this lecture also it is majorly natural farming that we should shift towards natural farming, like the main content was like that only. So is that feasible or not feasible?
No, actually there has been certain misconceptions. Generally people say that traditional agriculture is a poor yielder, and that's why actually most of the farmers they are running towards the modern agriculture so that they get less. But as I said, in case you see the whole system in totality, you will find that traditional agriculture is as, you can say, economically beneficial as actually the modern. With the rice there has been several experiments where actually they have proved that the traditional high yielding varieties under, you can say, natural condition they give as good yield as the recently biotech released varieties. So उसमें आपने इतना पैसा लगाया, but ये finally under the natural condition where we are going for low budget, you can say, agriculture, there is no need actually. Why actually the farmers are committing suicide? India actually has a, you can say, in the recent past, हम लोगों ने 60-70s में तो farmers के suicide नहीं सुने थे. This has started after the introduction of high tech. High tech में क्या है? जो seed companies हैं, they are spending millions of dollars. For example, BT gene, they have spent actually millions of dollars. So naturally, their seed cost will be very high. Now farmers actually in the greed of getting more income, he goes and he buys very expensive. When actually he comes back and he, sometime actually the crops is very good, but other time when the heavy infestation is there or situations are different, he is not able to recover his money and he commits suicide. So what I mean to say that we should look for a country like India or developing countries, we should look for what we call as sustainable or conservation agriculture. The agriculture which is actually, वो जैसे हमारे मैंने बताया ना रिले, उसमें क्या है कि यदि आप different type of variety, the good example will be multi-line theory. Now हम लोग सोचते हैं कि साइंटिस्ट ने multi-line theory डेवलप की, but I have, because I was working in agriculture side, I have traveled actually around the world. Multi-line practice जो है, it is common in many countries, including Africa, which is taken as a primitive agriculture. And the advantage of this, that you are able to reduce the infestation, because when you are growing actually 2-3 varieties, then a variety may be highly susceptible, but the pathogen is not able to multiply so much because the other varieties is resistant, and that's how they are really. So in our also Konkan area वगैरह में आप जाइए, वहाँ पे multi line लगाते हैं. So what I mean to say that from these practices we can take an idea, and then this can be combined so that actually we go for the present. क्योंकि हमारा जो इंडिया में सबसे बड़ी जो प्रॉब्लम है कि our farmers are economically poor, they cannot go for high input, और हम लोग जो है कॉपी कैट की तरह कवल करना चाहते हैं कॉपी जो वेस्ट को ये नहीं देखते. अमेरिका में ए फार्मर, एक तो लैंड होल्डिंग बहुत ज़्यादा है, ही कल्टिवेट 1 क्रॉप इन ए ईयर. इंडिया में मिनिमम 2 तो लेते ही है क्रॉप, कुछ जगह 3 भी लेते हैं, कुछ जगह 4 भी लेते हैं. नाउ इफ यू कैलकुलेट द होल थिंग इन टोटलिटी, and when you calculate actually the mixed cropping and other things etc., you will find that they are economically they are doing 100 मतलब far better actually as compared to the American farmers. तो ये जो गवर्नमेंट कह रही है मतलब जीरो तो नहीं पॉसिबल है, मगर लो बजटिंग इज पॉसिबल. बट ये है कि अगेन we had to concentrate, we had to, because you know all high yielding varieties they require high input. जब हाई इनपुट के लिए फार्मर जाएगा और वो मिलेगा नहीं यूरिया तो लाइन में लगेगा, फिर जो उसको उतनी पैदावार नहीं बिकॉज ऑफ नाउ सीवियर, बिकॉज वी आर एडवर्सली इफेक्टिंग. व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन बिहार? सो मतलब वी हैड टू गो फॉर सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर. सो दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग जो अभी प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट सोच रही है, इट इज़ गुड बट इट हैज़ टू बी मॉडरेटेड. वी कैन नॉट गो फॉर जीरो बजटिंग बट वी कैन गो फॉर लो बजटिंग, क्योंकि इसमें पूरा कैलकुलेट करिए तो फार्मर का जो फैमिली का जो लेबर लगता है वो भी तो कैलकुलेट करना है. तो जीरो बजटिंग तो हुआ नहीं, वैसे भी लो बजटिंग हुआ. तो ये है कि इन केस वी अडॉप्ट ऑल दीज थिंग्स देन आई थिंक वी कैन फाइंड ए सॉल्यूशन. बट आई थिंक अगेन ऑल दीज थिंग्स दे रिक्वायर ए वेरी क्लोजर ऑब्जर्वेशन, एंड एज आई सेड एवरीथिंग कैन नॉट बी अप्लाइड एवरीवेयर. जैसे हम लोग करते हैं ना, वेस्ट का जो एग्रो इको सिस्टम है वो यहाँ पे नहीं आप रहे, क्योंकि हमारी कंडीशन जो है कम्प्लीटली डिफरेंट है. सो व्हाट वी कैन डू, देखिए वेस्ट की जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उसको हम इम्प्रोवाइज करें एज पर आवर एग्रीकल्चरल कंडीशन, देन ओनली वी कैन बी हैविंग विन विन सिचुएशन. क्योंकि जैसे मैंने बताया ना, इम्पोजिशन ऑफ डीएनए टेक्नोलॉजी इन इंडिया विच इज फ्लोरिस्टिकली सो रिच इज ए फुलिश you can say idea. But ये है कि that technology in case it is used for cis transiences, because we have lot of, nobody actually has studied the variation or diversity which is found in the wild species. हम लोग जो है जितना भी थोड़ा बहुत इवोल्यूशन किया है जर्म प्लांट ऑफ द कल्टिवेटेड स्पीसीज, बट वाइल्ड स्पीसीज का तो जर्म प्लांट का इवोल्यूशन हुआ ही नहीं है. वी डोंट नो देयर एक्चुअली पोटेंशियल, और उस पोटेंशियल को हम पता कर लें, then using the DNA technology, directed transfer of that particular gene can take place. So this is the way actually we can combine.
In India, mostly farmers adopted a hybrid variety. And so how do we maintain a traditional variety and the hybrid variety? Because farmers need to high production. And all the traditional variety, they are not in the high production, capable to high production.
नहीं वो हाइब्रिड टेक्नोलॉजी इज क्वाइट गुड एक्चुअली, एंड एज आई सेड, बट ये है कि इनिशियली वी हैड टू सी दैट व्हाट टाइप ऑफ द फार्मर कैन अफोर्ड इट. नंबर वन, बिकॉज द हाइब्रिड व्हेन यू आर ट्राइंग टू डेवलप हाइब्रिड सीड तो उसमें कॉस्ट ज़्यादा आती है. तो उसके 2 ऑप्शन हैं. एक तो हम लोग टेक्नोलॉजी ऐसी डेवलप करें जिसमें प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट जो है ऑफ हाइब्रिड सीड शुड नॉट बी वेरी हाई. एंड एज ए गुड एग्जाम्पल इज चाइना. चाइना में 70% कल्टिवेशन ऑफ राइस इज हाइब्रिड, मगर वहाँ पर हाइब्रिड सीड का जो प्रोडक्शन है इज वेरी लो. कॉस्ट ऑफ द हाइब्रिड सीड प्रोडक्शन इज वेरी लो. वो करते क्या है, वो जो मेल स्ट्रायल लाइन और जो जिनका सीड प्रोड्यूस करना है वो 5 और 1 के रेशियो में लगाते हैं, और फिर वो करते क्या है, वो जो है वो बांध देते हैं डोरी, डोरी बांध देते हैं, और वो क्या है फिर जाके वो सुबह जाके हिलाते हैं, वो पॉलन पूरे बिखरती है. एंड अब फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन इंडिया people try to develop actually the hybrids of pigeon pea. It didn't succeed because actually the cost of that particular thing was very. अच्छा, दूसरा ये है कि जबरदस्ती नहीं है कि हाइब्रिड ही लगाएंगे साहब. It has to be as per the situation. For example, in US, no hybrid cotton is cultivated because there actually if they calculate the ratio, cost benefit ratio, they've discovered that the open pollinated varieties are as good in cotton or producing as good as the hybrid. So where is the need? तो वो जो है कोई चीज़ फोर्स नहीं करना चाहिए. We have to actually research that particular thing and then. So for example, wherever hybrid technology can be used, where we can produce the seed which can be affordable to Indian farmer, economically poor Indian farmer. अब इसके बहुत से सॉल्यूशन हो सकते हैं. जैसे मैंने बताया हमारे इंडियन फार्मर्स बेचारे की लैंड होल्डिंग बहुत कम है और वहाँ की तो इस वजह से उनको गेन होता है, जैसे सोयाबीन वगैरह वो करने. तो इसका सॉल्यूशन ये हो सकता है कोऑपरेटिव फार्मिंग स्टार्ट करो, जैसे जापान में होती है. नाउ कैन दी गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइज एक्चुअली ऑल द फार्मर्स ऑफ द विलेजेस. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इन वेस्टर्न यूरोप में देयर इज अ कंट्रोल. You cannot cultivate wheat actually up to after a particular limit. मगर यहाँ पे क्या होता है पंजाब में? We knew very well that cereal after cereal is causing degradation of the soil etc. मगर तब भी क्योंकि easy था, democracy है नहीं. So all these things actually require some thought and regulation. Then only actually we can achieve. And in case we just पागलों की तरह हम लोग इस्तेमाल करेंगे, then I don't think. So you check actually. For example, I will give you 2 examples. Hybrid cotton is not cultivated actually in US, and 70% of the cultivation in China is hybrid rice. Why? तो सेम हम लोगों को देखना पड़ेगा कि जहाँ अच्छा पिजन पी में फॉर एग्जांपल हेट्रोसिस भी बहुत कम थी. सो जो वो जो है ईल्ड भी जो इतनी नहीं आ रही थी. सो दैट्स वाई पिजन पी में इक्रीसाइड वगैरह ने इतना पैसा खर्च किया, द हाइब्रिड सीड डिड नॉट सक्सीड. और ये होता है रिसर्च में. निफ जीन फॉर एग्जांपल और दिस ये लेट राइप जीन जो था टमाटो में, अमेरिकन कंपनी इतना पैसा लगाया, बाद में दे डिस्कवर कि इट इज़ नॉट इकोनॉमिकली वर्किंग, दे ड्रॉप द. कोई जबरदस्ती थोड़ा है कि इसी को ही करना है. जैसे हमारे यहाँ हिंदुस्तान में क्या है कि अब बायोटेक्नोलॉजी तो हर एक कोई चाहे उसका बेनिफिट हो चाहे ना हो, बायोटेक्नोलॉजी लगाना है. जबकि 90% ऑफ द रिसर्च ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी जो है वो इट इज ऑल पेपर ओरिएंटेड. इफ यू गो मतलब ये है कि एंड दैट इज द रीजन एक्चुअली कि हम लोग जो है दो एक्चुअली वी आर रिकॉग्नाइज वेरी गुड साइंटिस्ट पर्टिकुलरली इन द बायोलॉजिकल साइंसेस मतलब एंड वी हैव, बट ये है कि ओवर जो डूइंग जो है ना वो कभी कभी जो है काफ़ी मतलब निगेटिव इफेक्ट भी करती है.
Questions. We would like to thank sir for coming here, taking out time for us, taking all the effort to come here, preparing an excellent lecture, and also giving us his valuable input for the manual. So we are very thankful to you, and NVPGR is always very welcoming and very indebted for your
So nice.
contributions to NVPGR.
So nice.
So we'd like to present sir with a token of our appreciation, and I'd like Veena ma'am to do that, please.
So nice of you. Thank you.
थोड़ा सा सरी जरा.
हाँ लाइट ज़्यादा पड़ रही है. कम
इधर